Hello and welcome to our series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is a storybook, From the Gulag to the Castle. He's been a well-known playwright, a political essayist, a political activist, a convict. He's been a brewery worker, and his human rights activism got him elected as the president of Czechoslovakia. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Václav Havel. Dr. Havel is here in Delhi to receive the Gandhi Peace Prize, and he has embodied the aspirations of numerous individuals and their capacity to make a difference non-violently. What does the Gandhi Peace Prize mean to you, Dr. Havel?
Já si samozřejmě této Gandhiho
So I'm very grateful and
velice
I have a lot of respect for this prize. I know that it is the highest prize in India, and I know that it is always decided by a group of the highest-ranking personalities in your country who will be given the prize each year. And most of all, it bears the name of Mahatma Gandhi, for whom I have a very profound admiration for his life and also for what he has bestowed upon us, for what he has left as a legacy to us.
To what degree do you feel that Gandhi's philosophy is something that you have been able to apply in your life? An absolute commitment to nonviolence. You know, it was reported that you recently wrote to George Bush endorsing military action. So how do you reconcile a passionate commitment to nonviolence with violence?
Já si myslím, že vždycky je třeba dávat přednost jednání, nenásilí, nenásilnému protestu.
Well, of course, I firmly believe that first of all you have to lead negotiations. You have to really use all the non-violent means that there are, non-violent protests, non-violent demonstrations, non-violent refusals. But there comes a time when there is a limit to this, and when the situation really attains a certain level of extreme, and then you need to, of course, use force. Because if I was to give you an example, I believe that during the Munich crisis, before the Second World War, if the Western powers were not afraid of using force, maybe millions of human lives would have been saved. So again, I repeat, of course, all non-violent means that there are, but there comes a limit to this. And in this, I believe that Gandhi was really a great source of inspiration, because he exactly advocated this kind of approach.
Je třeba vyčerpat absolutně všechny možnosti k eventuální nenásilné změně poměru k lepšímu, a v tom byl Gandhi velký učitel mnoha lidí na celé zeměkouli.
What about Iraq? It must have made the president somewhat unpopular with Western colleagues.
Já si myslím, že ten krutý režim Saddama Husajna.
Well, I believe that the very cruel regime in Iraq had to be overthrown sometimes. It is a matter of respecting the dignity of human beings, of simply reacting to people in need. You would also help a man who would fall down on the pavement next to you. So man-to-man assistance, nation-to-nation assistance is something that makes us civilized beings. We inhabit, after all, the same planet, and the sacrifices and the sufferings of the Iraqi people really called for an action, for some kind of a strong reaction. Now, of course, this being said, it is also a matter of when to launch such an action, how to do it, with what kind of support. And all this, I believe, has been and will continue to be a matter of a very wide-ranging political debate that will continue for more time to come.
Široké politické rozpravy, která se vede a povede se možná ještě dlouho.
Mr. President, you, in a sense, embraced the NATO alliance and encouraged NATO to expand. leading further to a unipolar world in many ways. Do you fear the consequences of a single superpower?
Já si nemyslím, že by
Now, I certainly don't think that NATO should be understood as a kind of extended arm of the United States of America. Neither do I think that it should aspire to taking the role of some kind of a world power. It is a defense alliance, an alliance around the subject of defense of its members, and those members have therefore decided to come together in order to ensure their security, and it is something that is needed, otherwise the entire European, to encompass the entire European continent, because if that is not the case, Europe would be eternally divided. And it is also alliance between Europe and the US and Canada, because those three entities or two continents are in that respect bound by the same or similar historical, cultural and civilizational links. And in no way is it more reliable than any other. It is just that this region is of course cooperating with the others, but is coming together in order to combat different threats, especially terrorism at present, which has a global nature. By no means is it a case of one state waging a war against a member of the alliance.
Možné hrozbě, tou hrozbou teď například v této epoše je pravděpodobně terorismus, že nikoliv nějaký konkrétní lokalizovatelný odpůrce či nepřítel, nikdo se nechystá přepadnout žádný stát této aliance.
Does the President see the Huntington thesis in civilizational terms unfolding, the clash of Islam with Western civilization and China on the other hand, and India and the Soviet Union being swing states? So in the larger sweep of history, and as a poet and philosopher, how does the President see this unfolding?
Já si myslím, že to je velmi zjednodušující a I
believe that it is very simplified, if not in a way a dangerous idea, that of the conflict of civilizations. I believe that this is an issue that needs to be analyzed in more depth, because if, for instance, we take the fundamental texts of the different religions, we see in a way that they are quite similar in the sense that they bestow the same, if not the similar, if not the same moral imperatives on mankind in those different religions. And no religion, no entity has a program of attacking the people of another faith. So this is something that is displayed, and these flags are displayed by people of bad will. I believe that the situations or the reasons behind are further more complicated. I also believe that some people are being misused. There are also different other arguments, social, religious, political, and different other arguments that need to be taken into account. So again, I would warn against such an oversimplification, which could really be dangerous.
Světa jsou prostě ta různost těch kultur a civilizací a že ty konflikty jsou nutné vždycky na hranicích těch civilizací.
We need also to see that the Western world has offered the world at large kind of contemporary global civilization that at present really encompasses the entire world. But it is a civilization that is by its very global nature somehow unifying, and maybe it is that some entities are unable to confront it with their own strengths and see it as a binding civilization, and therefore this may be the reason why some people start to talk about a clash of civilizations, and then it is taken up by some Western philosophers or thinkers or political analysts, and this idea is then living its own life. But I would not talk about a clash being originating from the different ethnic groups or from different religions.
Mr. President, you have met frequently with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and developed a relationship with him. Is this come out of your interest in the preservation of Tibetan culture and heritage, or the political rights of the Tibetan people?
I have enormous respect for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I must say that I have great concern for the spiritual sovereignty of his nation. By the way, it was 2 days after I was elected president of the then Czechoslovakia that I have already, in one of my speeches, invited him to come to our country, and maybe I was the first president to have done so. He is an extremely charismatic person, and he, as you know, is not advocating full independence from China. He wants Tibet to be able to be Tibet, so it is a certain Tibetan sovereignty that he advocates, and in that I believe that he needs to be helped, and the cause needs to be held. He, by the way, has visited our country several times after the first visit, and has also many admirers in our country, and he's been advocating his cause by very peaceful and non-violent means, which of course is another very strong characteristic, and he should be getting all the support he possibly can get for his cause.
Prostředky nenásilnými o to bojuje, a to je něco, co je třeba podpořit a co já podporuju po celou dobu svého politického působení.
Just as the Dalai Lama represents, shall we say, a philosopher king, not king in the formal sense, he's a philosopher and holds temporal power, you too, as a writer and a political essayist and a playwright, and your work in the theatre, were perhaps first hailed as a philosopher, statesman, before you were as a politician. Were the trappings of politics burdensome for you?
Není to vůbec jednoduché pohybovat se v tom politickém světě, ale zároveň si myslím, že by bylo velmi nesprávné říkat, že
politics should not be regarded as dirty business, even though it is indeed a difficult forum, if you will, to move around in. But it would not be correct to call it dirty business, and it would also not be correct to say that a person of strongly moral character, an intellectual, a person of wisdom should not get dirty by entering politics. That would make politics go down the drain. That would make the situation get worse and worse. And I believe that politics in general should not be divided from people, that it should be really seen as a service, and one of the 7 social sins mentioned by Gandhi was politics without principles. I believe a politician should serve the principles above and foremost, and not seek the short-term advantages of being in politics, but have a longer vision with the principles at first.
Mr. President, if we may take a brief break, but we'll be right back for this inviting conversation with Dr. Václav Havel.
Worsted suitings from J. Hampstead. the fabric of life. True Value Suitings.
Now with International Agile Gypsy Pen, get a hit from songs audio cassette worth ₹30 free.
इन सर्दियों में आपकी कोल्ड क्रीम दूसरों के लिए कितनी फायदेमंद है।
ऑयली स्टिकी स्टिकी
पेश है आयुर नॉन स्टिकी हर्बल कोल्ड क्रीम। रूखी सर्दियों में आपकी त्वचा को दे परफेक्ट ऑयल बैलेंस। इसमें है विटामिन ई और एलोवेरा। आयुर हर्बल कोल्ड क्रीम, बिना चिपचिपाहट त्वचा में समाए नजर न आए।
Artists and writers and philosophers frequently experience self-doubt. Did you experience self-doubt while you were president?
Inside my country, I was most criticized for having committed two sins. One was to eternally doubt everything, most of all myself. And the second was to act as a moralistic preacher. I see those two activities as being in quite an opposition to themselves.
Mr. President, you're on record as saying that you used to smoke a great deal and you fell very seriously ill and that you almost died. How did you give up smoking, and what was it like to be so close to death? How has it changed you?
Já jsem prostě, když mi
Doctors told
lékaři
me
řekli,
that
že
it would be
nemám
best for me to
covid,
quit smoking,
tak jsem prostě
and
kouřit přestal.
I quit it. After 45 years, stopped smoking from one day to the next. It was some kind of a trial of will, and I managed to do so without any substitutes for cigarettes. But I should also add that I'm in no way ideological non-smoker, and I would definitely not advocate the no-smoking ideology to people around, because I believe it is really up to each and everyone. It is up to each person's habits and discipline to decide what to do.
In what ways were you changed by the suggestion that death was imminent? When we confront the possibility of death, in some ways it changes us.
Těžko říct, já jsem měl
First, I should say that when I was really imminently in danger, I was under narcotics. I was rather in a narcosis myself, so I had experienced some hallucinations, and to some extent those hallucinations prevailed when I was no longer in narcosis. So that was a bit dangerous, because I was afraid I might commit something which would not really correspond to my real life. The second very important factor is that my wife made my situation much easier by being physically present with me, by expressing concern and by offering care. And the third factor, the confrontation with death, if in any way it changed me, maybe it made me more acutely aware of the need to have order in things. I became very concerned about leaving a clean desk behind me, because I suddenly realized that really one can go, one can depart from one moment to the next. So this was the time when I decided to publish, for instance, my collected works, so that these things be in order. And I am very much concerned by disorder, not only my own, but in general terms, for instance, about the human disorder that was left by the first expeditions on the moon, for instance. I must say that I'm really quite unhappy about the fact that there are so many debris and so much waste behind those expeditions on the moon that will remain there for dozens of thousands of years as a memorial of human disorder, if you will.
Dr. Havel, you spoke about ordering the universe, and that was the sort of experience of your near-death experience, in a sense. When you look at the planet around you, there is so much disorder, chaos, and conflict. Are you despairing? Do you feel that the planet is in a process of disintegration and increasing conflict? We have conflict not just in the sense of the use of nuclear weapons, as the conflict that was going to come out of water scarcity between WTO, the abuse of the environment. We seem to be a race, a civilization at odds with itself.
Já bych řekl dvě věci. Za prvé, svět, vesmír, kosmos, naše bytí je velmi tajemná věc a nikdo z nás to nerozumí.
Indeed a very mysterious thing, and nobody understands really how it is. And when I talk about order, I don't mean that we shall be pushing the universe into some kind of a structure of our own invention. We have to have respect towards the mysterious nature of being, and by this I mean that what we are to do is to be done with humility, with order, with respect to the universal order there is. You are right in saying that there are different quite substantial challenges and threats looming upon us. And mankind does know about these threats and challenges. Many conferences are being held on those subjects. Many works have been written. I myself have organized for several years now a conference called Forum 2000, to which Dalai Lama also has been coming as a guest. But at the same time, there is somehow little will to really confront these challenges and problems with the concrete strength and willingness. And I would like to come back to Gandhi, the way by which the way we should adopt in order to confront the different dangers, be they social or environmental. All this needs to be searched for in our inner self, and people should come to reason. Everybody should start within himself or herself, and this is indeed what I tried to express as a kind of message in my speech today. And anytime I am confronted with a big problem, when I try to analyze it, I finally reach the conclusion that the only person, the only force that can really change the problem is the human being. Each and every one of us. Much depends on how you behave towards the others, how you behave towards yourself, what is your level of discipline, how much are you ready to make sacrifices, how do you behave towards this planet that we inhabit and that we depend upon.
Té planetě, kterou obývá a na které je závislý.
Do you fear death, Mr. President?
Já bych.
If I'm afraid of death, well,
jestli se bojím smrti, jo.
I would rather quote a Czech poet who said, "I am not afraid of death. Death is not terrible. What I'm afraid of is the process of dying." To know that it will end by death and to suffer for a long time is something that I would definitely not want. Even more so since I have come across such situations several times in my own family, and I have witnessed months of suffering and dying of those that were closest to me. But I'm not really afraid of death itself. Of course, I'm curious to know what will happen on this earth after I am gone, but I have a very strange and a very deep feeling that is difficult to explain, that is difficult to explain rationally, especially, and that is that I somehow will know what will be happening here, that I will be there.
One final question. Now that you're free from the trappings of the presidency, What future, what do you see for yourself? What would you like to do? What will bring you happiness and fulfillment at this time in your life?
Já bych samozřejmě velmi chtěl se
Well, of
stáhnout
course,
trošku do
I
ústraní
would
a
like
nějaký
to
čas
step aside a little bit, be able to concentrate, to read, to write something more substantial. It seems, however, to still be an illusion, not a reality, after the almost 1 year that I have stepped down. But I don't mean that I don't want to be present on an international arena and express my opinion on some key matters. But I need to strike the right balance between that and my own more private work.
Mr. President, thank you very much. That's been a great privilege.